Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to see many of familiar faces. Welcome back. And if this is your first time joining us today, I am Mark Rivera, Education Manager and Director of Latinx Affairs at Bytes Back. We've been working with y'all for a little over a year now, which we are thrilled to be still doing. And today's topic, if you didn't read the description, is all about how to choose a computer if you want to buy a computer. Now, I know a lot of you are connecting with your iPads, and it's great to have an iPad, but if you think that you want to also invest in another machine, we're here to help you navigate that process. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so all of you can see what I am seeing. And now let me just select the option to go to full screen mode. And here we are, how to choose a computer. Pretty straightforward. Today, what we're going to discuss basically all the different components of a computer and what makes a computer, right? What's on the inside, what's on the outside, and also something that is very important to talk about, new versus refurbished computers, right? Because that's a very, very different thing when you're getting a new one versus a refurbished one. So that being said, let's get started with what's on the inside of a computer and what does it matter to you? So what is a gigabyte, right? A gigabyte is very simply, it's a unit of storage. It means how much memory does your computer actually have? And memory is important because the more memory you have, the more features, the more things you can do. And so a common question I get when I talk to people about what computer they should get, they say, well, how much memory do I need to actually be able to do something? And some common memories are 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, and 16 gigabytes. And the reason this matters is that it's not just a matter of how much you can do, it's also a matter of how much does it cost? Because with every additional addition of gigabytes, the more gigabytes you have, the more expensive the computer you're going to buy is going to get. The way I always do this, the rule of thumb, is look at the programs you use most often. Research. So let's say you want to use Microsoft Office programs. They will say, hey, if you want to use Microsoft Office 365 or Microsoft Office 2019, they will say you need a minimum of, and then they'll give you that amount of memory that you need, right? If you want to use some more complex software, maybe there's a game that you want to play, it will say you need a minimum of this much memory. So that's what I always defer to. What are the programs you most commonly use? And how much memory do they say you need? For something like Microsoft Office, you only need 4 gigabytes. If you want to do, use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, like I am right now, you don't need a lot of gigabytes to really perform. But when you do games, or your kids do games, or your grandkids do games, or things of that nature, you're going to need a little bit more memory to support that. For instance, one of our certification courses here, CompTIA A+, we need 16 gigabytes. All our computers that need a minimum of 16 gigabytes because we do some very complex software programs. So that's about memory. Hard drive is a little different, right? What's a hard drive? A lot of you have heard of this before, probably like, oh, a hard drive. I heard about HDD versus SSD. Well, a hard drive helps run the computer, right, is basically how it goes. And there's 2 different kinds of hard drives. There's literally a hard drive, which are these disks that spin, and then there's the SSD, which is more a chip now, right? And once again, one matters more than the other. So hard drives and these HDD versus SSD, the HDDs, they typically weigh more because they are bigger. So whatever computer you get, it's going to weigh more, but it's also going to cost you less. SSDs are going to be more expensive because they're lighter and often because they are faster. So it really depends on what you want. Do you mind having a little bit of a heavier machine? Do you mind it being a little slower? Or do you really want to be light and fast? So that's something that's very important to remember when it comes to hard drives versus SSDs. A lot of this translates into money, right? At the end of the day, what is a processor? You've probably heard about this too. You hear you see the commercials and it says, oh, this is the version 3 of this chip, or version 5 or version 7. And then you hear the Intel song, do, 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 come up, right? A processor is more or less the circuitry of a computer. A processor, in many ways, the CPU is what's going to make sure that the computer works, and it works quickly and it works correctly, right? And so when you see those version 3 or version 5 or version 7 of those Intel chips, that's what they are doing. They are helping things move faster through the computer, right? The commands that you are typing in, it's executing them at a certain speed, right? That being said, once again, it also matters what you get, because it's going to affect the cost, the price of your computer. So if you have a processor that is Intel i3 versus, that's going to be a lot less than an i7, right? And so it really, again, it depends on what you use a computer for, right? If you're using a computer and you're using programming that you know is going to be heavy, that you know is going to take a lot of energy, well, you want those higher processors to help you. Otherwise, your computer is just going to slow down, right? So you definitely don't want that to happen. So any questions so far about these pieces of the computer that we've talked about so far?
Well, Mark, I put
Yes.
in the chat, this is Yvonne.
Oh, hi.
Sometimes I play bridge online with 3 other people.
Oh, you're fine. You are fine. When I talk about gaming, I'm not talking about bridge. I'm not talking about solitaire. I'm not talking about those standard games that you might get. Even if you're playing online, it's not going to eat up a lot of memory. It's not going to take a lot of processing power. So that's actually a really good question. When I talk about gaming, I'm talking about those persons who are playing like Halo, or playing one of those like very new modern games online, and they're connected to the web, and they're like playing with literally hundreds of other people online at any given moment. Those are the kinds of games I'm thinking about. Those are the ones that require a lot of processing power and a lot of memory. But bridge, you'll be fine.
Well, playing with bridge or some other card games online, does that expose you to hackers or spyware?
That's actually an excellent question. I'm really glad you brought that up, Yvonne. I'm not going to say it can't. It depends on the site. How reliable is it? How long it's been around? What are their authentication processes? And also, different sites collect different data. If it's a paid site, that can be a little riskier because you're giving more personal information versus a free site, right? So it really depends. Just going to sites isn't always going to expose you. And remember, and for those of you who weren't in our previous lesson on how to defend yourself against online threats, typically speaking, when you go to a site that is vulnerable, when you go to a site that, where you could be at risk, you'll usually get a message that pops up at the top that says, this is unsafe, or you'll have what we call the red screen of death will pop up and say, you are being directed to a website that might be dangerous. Well, if you get that message, don't trust it. But if you don't get that message, if nothing's necessarily happened, I don't want to put it out there. But if you don't get that message, and it's a site that's been well established that a lot of people visit, odds are you're going to be okay. But like I said, it also depends what information you're giving.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Sure. And this actually brings up one more important point, Yvonne, which I thank you for that, is you can never have enough protection yourself. So let's say you do visit a site, let's say you do click on a link, it always helps to have that antivirus software program running in the background, because even if something does go awry, ideally it will capture that virus. Your antivirus software, it will help identify it and quarantine it for you, so you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't have to be.
Well, my email recently was hacked, and that's why I'm so concerned about that. And
that makes sense. Yeah.
So I was in touch with Microsoft, and
good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
And Microsoft put me in touch with their technician, who put in a program for me that established a firewall.
Oh, that's great.
And it was called WebRoot. I was not familiar with WebRoot at first. I don't know whether you are or not, but it said it established a firewall. And let's see, I was looking at all the other things, but it said it's better than Norton or the other free
Right.
antivirus software
well,
because it
I'll
does more.
I'll say this, Yvonne. It's great that Microsoft took their time to help you out, even though, you know, I would just ask that, can everyone mute, please? I'm sorry about that. I just want to make sure that we can all be heard. I suggest, even if you have Windows Defender, which is automatic on PCs, you still get a second line of defense, right? Whether that be AVG, McAfee, whichever program that you trust, it's always good to have a second line of defense on your computer. That being said, and this actually speaks to this whole idea of processing power, of memory, you know, that if you have multiple programs running in the background, if you have multiple antivirus software running the program in the background, it's going to take more processing power, or else your computer is going to start to slow down, and it can sometimes freeze. But that's just something to be considerate about. Usually that doesn't happen unless you're running inspections, you know, because a lot of software, antivirus software programs, you'll run a scan. So if you're running scans with two different programs, then yeah, of course it's going to slow down your computer. So you just want to make sure that you don't have them competing with one another. But I still think it's good to have more protection. So as far as the outside, I want to talk a little bit about computer types and screens, because I think that's usually what a lot of people care about, right? What is the difference between this iPad I have, which is so great, versus a laptop, versus a Chromebook, versus a desktop, versus Amazon Fire? And a lot of the time, the biggest difference is capability and ease of use, right? And the reason I say, let's just start with capability. iPads are wonderful computers, but they aren't necessarily going to be able to do as much as a desktop computer or even a laptop, right? There's going to be some limits to what they can do. For one thing, you don't have a typical screen, or excuse me, a typical keyboard, right? When you're using your iPad, right? And for some people, they want to use a mouse and a keyboard versus having to navigate with their fingers. It's just a matter of preference and experience, but that's one limit to an iPad, right? As well as a limit to usually an Amazon Fire pad. So that's something to consider. Also, because of their size, because of their lightweight, you might have to sacrifice things like processing power. You might have to sacrifice things like, you know, memory. So those things, if you want higher end memory, higher end processing power, you want to move faster, an iPad or an Amazon Fire may not be as good as a desktop or a laptop. That being said, it might even be better. You never know. You want to check the specs. It just depends on what is inside. And so it's important to at least check and say, oh, well, this actually does have good processing power compared. Now, when I talk about user, you know, how user friendly it is, you know, it comes down to, like I said, do you want to use a touchscreen versus just being able to use a mouse to direct things? Do you want to use a keyboard versus having to use a touchpad? You know, whatever it is, those are pretty much the biggest differences you're going to encounter, right? It's a matter of, it's also weight, transportation, right? A laptop is easy. Some laptops are easy to put in a bag and go wherever you want to. iPads, definitely, you can just walk out the door with them. Amazon Fire, same thing. Some laptops are really large. They're 15 inches, 16 inches, 17 inches. And so carrying those things around, lugging those things around, suddenly it becomes not as easy as just having a pad, right? Desktops, you can't carry them around unless you're Hercules. You're not going to be lugging around a desktop everywhere you go. But typically speaking, desktops are going to be less expensive than all of these other computers. And desktops are also going to, you know, because they have more space, they might have more processing power. It's easier to load them up with bigger memory and bigger processing power. So there's all of these different things to consider when looking, saying, do I want to stick with my iPad, or do I want to transition to a laptop, or do I even want to invest in a desktop? Really, it all comes down to, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to move around? Are you comfortable typing on a touchpad? It's all a matter of what you want to do at the end of the day, right? And that's the question, really. What's best for your lifestyle? What kind of screens? Do you want it to be static? You know, for instance, I have a screen. I have a touch screen right here that I'm working from. And sometimes I get frustrated because sometimes I'll like, oh, what's that thing? And I'll press it and then it'll open up something without me even intending that to happen. And I say, oh, that's right. I have a touchscreen. I have to remind myself, right? I prefer static. I'm old school like that. Battery life. This is key. The bigger the screen, typically speaking, the faster your battery will drain. And so you're saying, well, I'm looking at a laptop. I like this 13-inch screen laptop, and I really like that the battery lasts a long time. Great. Well, it's 13 inches, so you may not be able to see things as well as you might on a 15, 16, 17-inch screen laptop. But then with that bigger screen, the battery is most likely not going to last as long. So that's something else you have to consider when thinking about screens. And once again, what are you using your computer for, right? Really, it's all about what are you going to use it for? Are you going to use it to play bridge and FaceTime with friends? Are you going to use it to make WhatsApp or Skype calls? Are you going to use it to, just pretty much send emails and access some government resources? What are the needs and what's your comfort level with those needs is really what it comes down to. Other questions about these differences that come into play with computers? This is an excellent question. I was looking at the confirmation hearing and noticed that a lot of senators had a laptop. Are laptops easier to get to use for older people? I would say yes. And the reason I say yes is because I may not look it, but I actually have very fond memories when I was younger of using a typewriter. I learned how to type on a typewriter before I learned how to use a keyboard on a computer. And the keys never changed. And so for me, I am much more fluid and comfortable typing on a laptop than I am typing on a keypad. I'm much more efficient typing on a laptop, right? So for me personally, when you say, oh, is a laptop, better? Well, again, it's what are you used to? How comfortable are you with it? And for me also, I like the convenience of being able to open up my laptop, put it on my lap, and type away and work from there, versus someone who prefers to have their pad and type like this and hold it, right? So really, it depends. Yes, certainly those senators were using laptops. It's convenient for them. Then again, they also don't have to carry them. Usually their aides do that, take care of the computers for them. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's really what are you most comfortable with?
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Operating systems. Now we're going back inside, but inside the computer, but also kind of outside the computer, because the operating system is more or less what you see, how you use the computer, right? So PC versus Mac, iPad or iBook versus a laptop, right? Or a desktop, right? Some of the differences when it comes to Mac and PCs, a lot of people say, oh, I love my Mac, it's so intuitive. And PC people will sometimes say, oh, I like my PC, it's much more convenient. I will be honest with you, if you're not used to using a Mac, it can take some time. Now, I have never invested in a Mac. My wife bought a Mac. She loves it. She swears by it. She's going to be a Mac person the rest of her life, and that's okay. But typically speaking, it's a matter of how much time do you want to invest in learning. If you're not used to a Mac, you will have to spend some time to learn those same tricks and shortcuts and tools that you might have learned in the PC. I will say this though, it doesn't take long to do. It doesn't. It's just a matter of investing some time up front. So if you're afraid, you say, oh, well, I don't know if I want to spend extra time. It's not that much time we're talking about. Another thing about PC versus Mac, though, and this is key, is that on average, Macs will cost more than PCs, whether it be Acer or Dell or HP or any of these other companies. A Mac will cost more money than a PC. But if you have the money and you have the time to learn how to use a Mac, go for it. If you think that it's going to be a better investment for you. When it comes to PC specific companies, like Acer or Dell or HP, I like to say the devil is in the details. And the reason I say that is because they all have their own different computers and laptops, they all have their own specs. And you can say, oh, well, Acer has this longer lasting battery, but Dell has this higher screen resolution, but HP has this, you know, this more convenience, or this dual mode. I can flip it and then suddenly it's a pad and it's not a laptop, whatever it is. In my experience, I've used all of these. I've used so many different computers over the years. I've never really noticed like one overwhelming big detail that says I'm going to be Acer for the rest of my life, or I'm going to be Dell for the rest of my life, or I'm going to be HP. It's all been the same to me. And that's just my experience. Maybe it's different for you, but that's how it's been for me. But for people, when they talk about Mac versus PC, most people who switch to Mac, they say it's very different and it's better. It's different in a better way. So it all depends. If you want to stay with PC, you can switch between those and probably not really see much difference. But if you want to make that jump to a Mac, if you haven't already, then you know, go for it. Price I mentioned, right? Battery length, Macs are very famous for having really good battery length versus PCs. PCs, they can have good battery length, but you have to check, because some PC laptops can say, oh, we have a battery length of 12 hours, 12, 13 hours, which is actually comparable to a Mac. Some laptops have a battery length of maybe 3 or 4. It depends. So you just want to make sure about those details. Security is something that we've talked about in the past, and security is key. I will say this for Macs versus PCs. Macs have very, very strong security built into them. PCs typically have more vulnerabilities. And that's because of the operating system. The Mac operating system is harder to hack into than the PC operating system. And so that is something worth considering, right, when you're investing in a machine. Let me go back to the screen.
Mark,
yes.
sorry, quick question.
Go for
So with an iPad or a Mac, you say it has strong protection. Do you recommend also downloading you know,
Yes.
a
Secondary protection, yes. Even though it has stronger protection, it has stronger protection than you would with a PC built into it because of the operating system. You still want to make sure you have that extra layer of defense. It doesn't. The only way it could hurt you having that extra layer of defense, especially if you get the free system, the only way it could hurt you, and I said this already, is if you run a scan with both antivirus software programs at the same time, because then it's going to slow your computer down. Otherwise, there's really no downside to having a little bit more protection in your computer.
So if it picks up on a virus and it segregates it, do you have to go into that program and delete it, or you're good to go?
It depends. I don't mean to be vague here. It depends. I believe some antivirus programs, they have an option where it will just automatically quarantine it and remove it for you. Others, it gives you the option. It says, this has been quarantined. What do you want to do? How do you want to proceed? Right? So it depends on the program. I can't say which one does which, but that's typically how it operates. Those are the two standard paths you have to take.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions that might have come up? Oh, Carla, you raised your hand, please.
Yes, I wanted to know, is it possible to sync across systems?
What do you mean by sync? Like have the
Like if
same...
you have something on the iPad that you want on your Lenovo laptop.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's exactly what we're about to discuss right now. Compatibility with other systems. Checks in the mail for setting me up like that. Mac, one of the reasons why Mac users love Macs is because the integration across devices is seamless. It's very easy to transition from an iPad to an iBook to an iPhone to an Apple TV and just to send things to and back from them, right? It's great for that, right? So if you like are an all Mac, all Mac products, like you know, a lot of people do have iPhones, and that's one of the reasons actually my wife does like her MacBook, because she can just send pictures to and from. She can send materials, documents, whatever, from her phone to the computer and back again, right? So that's an advantage to having a Mac. With PCs, it's typically more difficult to do that. There's more steps involved. It's not as seamless to say, oh, well, here's my Lenovo. I'm going to send this over to the Dell, just, easy breezy, right? Or here's my HP printer. I'm going to hook it up to this other computer with no problem, right? So it usually takes a little bit more legwork for PC to PC versus Mac product to Mac product, okay? But here's the downside to that. Mac is also notorious for having their own specific plugs, right? And so let's say I walk into, and not that any of you would do this, but let's say I have to give a presentation in a classroom. 9 times out of 10, the cord that they use, the HDMI cord, it will plug into my computer and into that projector. But if I have a Mac, I need a special, what's called a dongle. I need a special connector to get the Mac connected to that thing. And that's what Mac is notorious for. Because typically speaking, if you want to connect your MacBook or your iPad or these things to other things, you're going to need special wiring for that, and that's going to cost you more money. And so that's something to consider when investing in a Mac versus a PC, is that it takes a little bit more to connect them. Now that's if you're connecting them. If you're not connecting them, if you're just using it for basic functionality, and you're just emailing and Facebooking and stuff like that, then it's no biggie. But if you think that you might actually have to give a presentation, might have to connect to other stuff, yeah, it takes a little bit more. Any questions?
Yes, Mark,
Thank you.
two
Thank
quick
you.
questions.
Mhm.
How much would such a converter cost in general?
Wow, central converter. Now, when you say central converter, you're referring to
Like something like that.
like what?
A dongle?
Oh, a dongle. It depends. It depends what you're trying to convert to. If you're trying to connect your, plug in your
Like a memory
Mac.
stick or
Oh yeah. Oh, that's it. Okay. So memory sticks are still compatible with older generation Macs. A lot more newer Macs, particularly the iBooks, they are eliminating USB drives. So that's something to consider as well, right? They want to make it specific, but I don't know about the price of a dongle. It depends on what you're trying to use the dongle for. So I believe it's somewhere in the ballpark of, and don't quote me on this, $35 to $55. And actually, I'm going to show you my messy windows. Please don't judge everyone. Let's just say iBook dongle. And here we go. We have a couple of examples, right? $70 for this dongle, USB dongle to connect to the Mac, right? And Bell can connect USB. So yeah, right back there. Here, a couple others. Apple's power supply charger. So it depends. And here's another thing. If you get the Apple specific dongles, the ones that are actually manufactured by Apple, naturally they will cost more money. If you get dongles that are manufactured by third-party vendors, they might be a little bit less, but they may not also work as well. So just something else to consider. But I think that's actually a good estimate.
so from things that I've read, they specifically tell you to get Apple products because you could actually cause damage. Is that true if you get a non-Apple product?
That's a great question. That is
Or is that
personally, I believe that's marketing. I believe that's them saying we don't want to lose market share. We want your money. Give it to Apple. Don't give it to anyone else. But in my experience, also the times that I have bought non-Apple products to use with the Apple product, they tend to break faster than an Apple product. There seems to be more quality control. So it's really, if you want to roll the dice. I don't think I don't see it any of the times I use the non-Apple products having caused harm to my Apple product, like my iPhone. I didn't see harm caused. It was just frustration because this thing that I bought recently stopped working.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And just my other quick question. So let's say you have an iPhone and you've downloaded non-Apple apps like LinkedIn and medical apps and things like that, and you get a new iPhone. And is there a way to avert having to re-download all these non-Apple apps so that it just
Yes.
automatically?
So typically speaking, when you upgrade iPhones, there will be a transfer process. It's actually pretty straightforward. I've upgraded several iPhones now, and each time I've just been able to transport all of my pictures and all of my apps from the one edition to the newer edition. So that's not that tough. Yeah, but to be fair, I've also done it with the assistance of the Verizon helper that I was working with. So maybe it would be tough if I were just doing it on my own, but it seems pretty straightforward process.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Excuse me. I just like to, this is our last topic here, and my favorite topic, because I think that there's a lot of misinformation about new, or there's a lot of stigmas around getting refurbished items, right? So one of the big differences, if you get a new computer or a refurbished computer, is price. You know, you can, and so a new computer, it depends on, you know, what your specs are, but we're talking usually a minimum of $500, $600, right? Whereas refurbished computers, you can get some pretty amazing refurbished equipment for as little as 100, 150 bucks, right? And so that's one key difference between new versus refurbished is the price. However, the lifespan becomes a bit of a, I don't want to say it's a liability, but the lifespan might be less than what it was. Now, in my experience, refurbished computers last just as long as new computers when done properly. But even so, there are those times where you get, there's the risk that the lifespan, it won't last as long. So, you know, refurbished computers can last as long as a new computer. It doesn't mean that they will last as long as a new computer. And to that point about, you know, how long they can last, it also depends on the warranty. Some refurbishers will say this equipment is only guaranteed for up to 1 month. Some will say it's guaranteed for up to 6 months. Some will say it's guaranteed for up to a year. Some will say it's guaranteed even longer than that. So when looking at a refurbished computer, see what that amount of time that it's guaranteed is. What is that warranty on it, right? New computers will have great warranties because they're new. Refurbished computers, the warranty might be less. So you want to look for that detail specifically, and that will give you an indication of whether or not you want to go for it.
And you're taking a chance also.
You might be taking a chance, but like I said, it depends on the warranty. Because if you have a year-long warranty on a refurbished computer, that's actually a pretty good warranty, or, you know, for a refurbished computer. And I would feel very confident getting a refurbished computer if they're offering a year-long warranty on the equipment. Software, you know, typically speaking, refurbished computers, you can add software to them. Specifically like Microsoft Office programs. New computers, you can do the same thing. So there's really not much of a difference in software when it comes to new versus refurbished. It's just a matter of, you know, just making sure that you find out what they come with beforehand. Warranty, we already spoke about. Now, selecting a refurbished computer seller, I will say this, there is a lot of competition though now, more so than ever before, for refurbished computers. The pandemic really made computers, or refurbished computers, valuable. And so prices went up, availability went down, and so it can be tough. And so you don't just want to go to any refurbished computer seller. Okay, there's good ones, and there's people who are just trying to make a quick buck. So you want to read those online reviews. Do your research about the refurbished computer seller, right? And also look at what those warranties are, look at what people are saying about them, look at how many people have given them positive reviews. All those things matter. Trust the word of mouth. And also ask friends. If someone says, oh yeah, I got this refurbished computer for 150 bucks and I'm loving it. Well, where'd you get it from? How'd you get it? Who'd you talk to? How long did it take you to get that computer? Ask those questions. WildTech, I would just like to give a plug here, who you all know very well because WildTech actually helps sponsor these programs for you. You know, we've been working with them very closely. They've given us a lot of computers for our scholars, for our programs over the years, and they are fantastic. I will say this about WildTech though, is that they have gotten a flood of requests because they're so reliable. So that being said, if they can't give you a computer, maybe they can at least point you in the direction of another refurbisher who they would recommend, right? And that's always good too, right? When I talk about online reviews and word of mouth, if you find someone that you trust, an organization that you trust, typically speaking, if they can't help you, they will help you find someone who can help you, right? And so they're a great resource to also go to. So one activity I would recommend, and we don't have to do this today, you know, because it means that you're going to have to get out of the Zoom and go do things, but go online and select a computer that you think meets all your needs, right? Go figure this out on your own. Test yourself. Even if you're not interested in a computer, it's a great exercise. You know why? Because even if you aren't interested in getting a computer right now, maybe a niece or a nephew is, maybe a grandkid is, maybe somebody in your life is going to come to you and say, hey, what do you think about this computer? Well, I want you to have those tools to answer the question for. And the way you answer the question is by asking yourself some questions, right? First one being, what are you most likely going to use the computer for? A lot of tasks or a few tasks? Very complicated tasks or standard easy tasks like sending an email or getting on Facebook? What are you going to use it for? Where are you going to use it? Are you a homebody? Do you like to just be, you know, in the comfort of your home all day long? Well, then you don't really need a laptop, do you? You could get a desktop, which is most likely going to be cheaper, right? Or are you really go, and you need that lightweight computer? You need that flexibility. The iPad is perfect for you, or maybe you want that laptop. Well, that's for something to consider about where you're going to be using this machine. Internet access, right? And this is really important because you can have a great computer, a great laptop, or a great iPad, but if you don't have internet access, it's going to limit what you can do with the machine. And so if you plan on being mobile, make sure you also ask yourself the question, will the places I'm going provide internet access for free or with a password that I can use or whatever it is? Will I have internet access? Because otherwise it's going to heavily limit what you can do with that computer. Who else will be using the computer? And this is something that a lot of people don't consider when they get a computer. And the reason being is that typically speaking, if you get a computer, it's your computer. But nowadays, and I mentioned this, I alluded to this with the pandemic, a lot of persons are sharing computers. You know, whenever we have to go into quarantine, whenever, you know, grandkids have to come over and we have to take care of them, well, are they going to be using the computer? Are they going to be using it for Zoom to connect to a classroom? Are they going to be using it to do research, to write a paper? Is anyone else going to be using this computer? Because you want to prepare for that. You want to say, well, you know, I don't need this much computer, this much memory, or this kind of fast speed, but maybe my loved one will. Maybe my friend who's going to come over will, right? And so you want to prepare for that so you aren't, you know, regretting it later. And this is, of course, the budget that really anchors the whole conversation too. What's your budget? What really are you willing to pay? And if you say, well, I can only spare 150 bucks, well, then that kind of determines that, well, yeah, refurbished computer is the way to go. If you say, well, I've got more than that, I can spend 500 bucks, that's going to open your up options. You say, well, I've got, you know, money's not an issue. Well, congratulations, please buy computers for all of us. Send me your email right now. But that being said, seriously, what's your budget and how far can you stretch your budget? And what's great about computers nowadays too, is that there's so much personalization that can happen too. So for instance, if you were to go to Acer will say, how much memory do you want, right? Acer will say, do you want a level 5 processor versus a level 7? And you can see and compare immediately what those different prices are in real time. So that's something else to consider, that you can actually customize your computer and compare what that extra, you know, memory or that extra speed will cost you. And because we're not doing the exercise, no one needs to raise their hand. But we are at the end of this presentation, which I said was going to be short, but that gives us more time to talk and to ask some questions. So one question that's already in the chat from Douglas Hall, thank you, Douglas, is please explain what a hotspot is and how it functions. So a hotspot is a remote internet connection, right? So typically speaking, internet service is provided by an internet provider like Comcast, like AT&T, Cox is another provider, right? And they come to your home and they set you up with internet in your house, right? And so you have your modem, you have your router, and you're connected to the internet through that service. A hotspot is kind of like all that built into one, where you plug it into your computer and then it connects you to the internet using Wi-Fi. So whatever, it makes sure that you're able to connect using Wi-Fi, and it acts as that modem and router for you. Here's the trouble with hotspots though. And I'm not saying they're not useful. They're very useful. We've used them at Byteback ourselves for scholars who we needed to get connected. But typically speaking, hotspot plans are more expensive and they don't provide you as much bandwidth, right? So there's going to be a limit. Or if there isn't a limit, let's say it's unlimited Wi-Fi that you get with a hotspot, they might put a limit on how much high-speed data you can download. So hotspots usually come with more catches to them, in addition to being more expensive. But that's basically what a hotspot is. If I'm here in my home, if I'm at the library, if I'm at a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi to begin with, I can just plug in that hotspot and I can get connected to the internet. And quite a few people, just so you know, will grab their cell phone and you can actually activate a hotspot for your computer. So let's say you have your iPad and there's no internet access immediately connected to it. You can activate it. You can use your cell phone if you have data as a hotspot and then connect to the internet that way. But yet again, you are up against those same limits, those same parameters of how much data do you have, how much does it cost, how fast will things download when using a hotspot. Another question. Wow, I know I didn't do that great a job presenting. Come on, any more questions?
Mark,
Yes.
hi. If you have a hotspot on your phone and you're trying to connect it to your Mac, is there anything more than to turn on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on your phone and then turning on the same on the Mac and then pairing the devices?
There's not much more to it, except that you'll usually get a password also, right?
Right.
As a safety measure.
Problem is that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm just wondering why.
You would have to ask the computer gods when they are feeling fickle or when they're feeling generous, because I've had the same experience that I pull it up, I say, okay, I want to discover my device, right? And that's important, right? And I think we've talked about this too when using Bluetooth. You need to make your device discoverable.
Right.
And so sometimes I'll use it and I'll discover it, and sometimes it doesn't show up on my computer as an option to connect to the internet. And that's very frustrating. And usually it takes, when that happens, only 2 or 3 more times, and then suddenly, oh, there it is. Now I can connect to you.
Right,
So,
because that's exactly what happened yesterday. I got the code,
yeah.
I entered it, and then I tried to like send emails or do whatever, and nothing would happen. It was just dead.
Yeah, I unfortunately I can't help you troubleshoot that. This just seems to be a common issue where, and ideally you're very close to your cell phone. I imagine you have your cell phone close to your computer, so that connection should be more seamless and easier, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Okay, good to know. It's not just me.
It's not just you. I promise you that. Yes.
Thank you.
Denise, you have a question as well?
Oh, yes. Good afternoon. I'm having a problem with my iPad.
Okay.
It's saying I'm not connected. I'm offline. And this other iPad I had my grandson I'm using now.
Okay.
I unplugged the motor box and I plugged it back in because this iPad, my grandson one was doing it too. So when I did that, unplugged it, the cable box, the motor box, I plugged it back up. His came back on, but the one that I got from the program is not up. it's still saying I'm not connected.
Hmm.
And my granddaughter, I think,
Let me ask you a quick question. How are you trying to connect?
I just turned it on. I was trying to get to the different apps on here.
Because
Won't open.
and I'm going to troubleshoot this with the group here. You have a lot of very talented, knowledgeable partners here. Correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, but you were given a certain access point, a certain way to connect, correct? You weren't relying on your own home internet. I believe when given these iPads, you were given something else to connect to the internet. Is that correct?
Yes,
It comes
that's
loaded
correct.
net and you just
Okay.
turn on the network. In
Okay.
the,
Right.
Great. So that might be what's going on. It might be the fact that maybe whatever resource that you got to connect is no longer working. I believe also that this connectivity was only going to be provided for like up to a year. There's a time limit on it. So if you're trying to connect your iPad, you need to try to connect it to in a different way. Maybe connect it to a Wi-Fi network if you have a Wi-Fi network at home.
That's what I have. I have my Wi-Fi network on here. But every time I go to open the app, it won't come. It keeps saying you're not connected, you're offline.
Wow.
Then something about the Safari or something like that, or I don't know. It's,
Wow.
it's weird
if I
because
could suggest something,
Sure.
if I could suggest something, the same thing happened to me and I had to turn it off and back on a couple times. And then the one time it automatically, like you saw 5G come up in the corner, the upper right-hand corner, and then
Yeah.
it started to work. And then another time, the same thing happened. And if you go to settings and network, it somehow it turned off by itself. You just turn it, you just tap on toggle and then it works again.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, because I've been trying to figure it out. Now, say I might have to call the
You need to
helpline.
call the help desk.
Oh, okay. But because I know what she was talking about when you push, it say something about the network. Because I even called Apple.
The help desk will figure it out.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, everyone. And
I-
that's why
I
that's why we
actually-
troubleshoot like this as a group.
I actually had a similar experience and I kind of sort of abandoned my iPad and then all of a sudden it started coming on again. I heard it beeping,
Oh,
but
really?
but it cut off. It was probably a good 10 days before I started hearing the beep again, you know, when it's a message or something coming in, and then it
Yeah.
turned back on.
Oh, wow.
I never
I
knew
thought it
why
was-
it did that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out too, because this iPad I'm on now is my grandson, but I put my name in so I can get on. And it was off too when I unplugged, not plugged the mobile box. You know, Monday when Apple
Yeah.
went out, the outage went out Monday on Apple.
So
You
yeah,
heard about
I
that?
think we have some
That's when the
advice.
problem started.
But I suggest you know you try this suggestion already made, and if not, then the help desk is going to be a great resource.
Mhm.
Other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other
Thank you,
questions I'd like to
everyone,
answer?
for giving me suggestions.
All right, questions going once, going
Mark.
twice. Yes.
Mark, I'd like to know what process is best for our iPad? The
What do you mean?
15, the 13, what processor is best for our iPad? Or do we have to worry about something like that?
So once again, it depends on what you think you're going to be using your computer for. One of my colleagues in the office is, you know, runs communications for us and uses a lot of graphics, a lot of, you know, things with the website, newsletters, things of that nature. And so they actually use a Mac. They use a full-sized Mac because it's great for that kind of thing. A lot of processor speed. But, you know, processor speed really, it just depends again on how fast you want to go, what you're using your computer for. You don't need, I'm now granted, I don't want to misspeak here. You don't need a lot of processor speed to necessarily watch a YouTube video. If you want to watch some YouTube videos or some, see some other stuff or watch a movie on Netflix, you don't need a lot of processor speed, but there is a risk depending on how many programs you're running, how many things you're doing at the same time, how high a screen resolution you have, that processor speed comes into play. So I don't want to undersell processor speed. It matters. At the same time, it matters only as much as what you're going to be using the computer for. Because like I said, also, the higher the processor speed, the higher the cost of the computer you're going to be buying.
So just regular 13 would be sufficient with the iPad that we had.
Yeah, no, your iPad, you can do just about everything. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone out there, but you can hop on and you can do a WhatsApp, you can Skype, you can Facebook, you can, email, you can do a lot of the things on your iPad just fine, if that's what you're using it for. But if you feel like there's a lot of other things, a lot of other programs that you want to use, you might need a different machine.
I think the iPad right now is sufficient.
Well, there you go. No need to spend any more money. You spend it on yourself.
Okay.
Go treat yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? All right. Well, if
Hey,
there are, one more
I'm
question.
sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually have and am in the market. I have a 2009 HP that is obviously amazing, but still be working.
Yeah.
However, it is time to shop and purchase a new one. I've already heard from some skilled and savvy tech folks within my own family. I have a nephew that's IT nut, and my computer is so old and the software is so old, it actually has Windows 7
Wow.
on it. And
Oh, wow.
it also doesn't use, again, pardon my terminology if it's wrong, but it doesn't even use the app formats. So I know trying to step into a new one, it's needed, but I'm also probably sort of anxious on how to wrap my head around, the way things are functioning now. So
well, I think that so thank you for this question, and I want to make it very clear that being anxious about buying a new computer is not just a you thing, that's an everyone thing. Whether you have whether you're upgrading, getting your first computer, getting your 10th computer, anytime I get a new computer, I'm still nervous because I'm like, is this what I really need? Is this what I want? So that's a lifelong thing. Don't worry about that. But you said something that I think is very interesting, which is you've got an IT family member, IT nut, who's a family member. You've got somebody in your corner who you can ask all those questions to, and should ask all those questions to, and even say, hey, can we just do a search and let me describe what I need? And can you help me find the right machine? And I think that's the best strategy for you. But like I said, that list of questions that I shared, what do you usually use a computer for? What's your budget? Is anyone else going to use a computer? Is this computer, how mobile do you want to be? Do you want to, walk around with it, go different places? All those things, ask yourself those questions, and that will help narrow the parameters of what that computer should be. Right. But also, like I said, you've got a great resource in that family member. So talk to them about it too. One thing I do want to say about searching for computers is that there's a lot of different ways to search for them too. Whether and ask around, ask your family member what they use, ask friends what they use. But one thing, I do want to stress that yes, when you get a new computer, make sure you're up to Microsoft 10. No more 7. Make sure you're at 10. Make sure that you've got the new stuff in there. Another point to consider that I didn't mention when it comes to a desktop versus a laptop. Now, granted, I have never upgraded my own computers myself. I've upgraded software, but I never upgraded hardware. One advantage to a desktop versus a laptop is that if you know somebody like your IT nut, it's easier to upgrade a desktop. You can actually, give it more memory. You can give it a higher processing speed. You can give it, better graphics, if you know how to do that, or someone who knows how to do that, right? Or if you have the money to pay somebody to do that. You can't do that with a laptop. Typically speaking, what you buy is what you get and what you will always have in that laptop. You can get new software, you can upgrade the software, but the hardware that will help it make it go faster, that will help it make you get better graphics, those things you can't upgrade in a laptop versus a desktop. Patricia, I see you have your hand up as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. I was wondering, what do you think about the computers where it says all in one?
Now, what do you mean a computer that says all in one?
Well, I actually have a Gateway desktop, and I don't have what you call, like, I guess it's the CPU. It's built into the machine. It's built into like screen.
I
Only
think
thing I
I
have
know what
is
you're talking about now. Yes.
I have the mouse and the keypad, but I don't have the huge thing. I think
Right.
it's the CPU.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about now. And just to say that all-in-ones computers, the amazing thing about computers is that as technology gets better, things get smaller. So for
Okay.
instance, for a desktop computer, you used to have that bulky side
Yeah.
piece,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right.
Now there are desktops where that bulky side piece is this little box in the back of the screen, and it has just as much processing power, has just as much memory, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you're talking about all-in-ones, the advantage is that you're going to take up less space. That's the big
Right.
advantage, right?
Right.
The disadvantage is that when you have an all-in-one, it's most likely going to also cost you more money.
Okay.
So it all depends, again, what your budget is, how you're going to use it, how convenient it is for you, So and with the all-in-ones versus like the big bulky style desktop, you won't really be able to upgrade it the same way you would the old school one.
Oh,
The
okay.
all-in-ones are closer aligned with like a laptop and its limitations than with the standard desktop model.
Okay, because I was wondering, I was thinking about buying a new one. I've had it like maybe 10 years.
Wow.
But
A lot of
does,
really resilient computers on this call today. That's awesome.
yeah, but it does what I needed to do, what I use it for.
Yeah.
And only problem I'm having now is that it's just kind of slow. And I think I just need to have someone look at it or something.
Yeah, and the thing about computers too, when it comes to speed, is that you're right. Some of these programs also, some of these like free antivirus programs that we mentioned, they have options where you can run a scan on performance, and it'll give you recommendations on how to improve performance. It'll say, oh, well, you have all these programs in the background that are running, you should turn some of them off, or, oh, you need to defragment your computer and we can do that for you. So that's another option. That's another benefit of having some of these other secondary antivirus programs.
Okay, all right.
Any last questions before we break? No pressure, but if you got a question, feel free to speak up.
Thank you so much. This was really terrific.
You're welcome. I'm always happy to have these conversations. I really appreciate you all attending.
Mark, this has been very helpful. Thank you so much.
Good, thank you. Well, if there are no more questions, or if you have questions after the fact, feel free to message me. I believe all of you have my email now, or you can even call up your help desk. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer a couple of questions.
Mark, would you repeat your email address?
Sure, it is mrivera.
Or in the chat.
In the chat. I was about to type it.
Oh, okay. Rivera
at byteback.org.
Okay.
MRIVERA at byteback.org. And you've got that's how you spell bytes back, BYTE, right up there next to my name. So it's in the chat as well. Oh, no, I sent it to one person by accident. Let me send it to everyone. Okay, now it's in the chat. So go ahead, copy, paste that as quick as possible. But if there are
Okay,
no
let me
more
do
questions-
that. Let me do that. Keep it up for a minute.
Well, I will do. But if there are no more questions, I will say thank you to everyone who has attended today. Appreciate your feedback, appreciate your input, and appreciate your participation. And we will see you again next month. So have a great day, everyone. Take care of
All right,
Thank
thank
yourselves.
you. Enjoy
you.
the rain.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.